Welcome to the PR Essentials Summit Series, Social Equity in Tech, and episode 118.
Welcome to the PR Playbook Podcast, the only podcast giving you actionable skills and advice you need to execute a strategic PR program. Warning: what you hear next may lead to brand awareness and increased sales and customer exposure. Now here's your host, Ranjini Joshua.
Hey there, we're back with the PR Essentials Summit Series. You can find all the PR Essentials Summit Series on demand on our website, by the way. It's www.thesilvertelegram.com/PR-summit- it's PR Essentials Summit 2022 with hyphens in between everything. So thesilvertelegram.com, PR Essentials Summit 2022 with hyphens. And you actually can get all the PR Essentials sessions on demand there. If you guys just can't wait to hear the next session. In this session, we talk about social equity in technology, what it means. Is it a fad? How are we going to keep it strong? How are we going to build social equity? And, what does it mean? I mean, we cover a lot of interesting topics. I talked to Askia Underwood and Mike Johns in this episode, and it's just very, very interesting. Our conversation went into a lot of different directions on celebrity responsibility. And then we also talked about just a kind of like the prevalence of tech in minority communities and what it's going to take to keep social equity strong and make sure that it's not like, affirmative action where it kind of was around for a while and was really more of a regulation than something people wanted to take a part of. We do talk a little bit about ESG as well. So join us. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with Askia Underwood and Mike Johns on social equity in tech. Hi, everybody. This is Ranjini Joshua. I'm CEO and founder of the Silver Telegram. I have joining me today is Askia Underwood, the U.S. Business Director from Aroma Project Factory. And we did have Mike, so he might be coming back soon. Mike Johns, founder and futurist at Digital Mind State. There he is. So today we're going to have a conversation on how social equity will impact the tech industry in 2023, what we should be thinking and doing as far as raising the profile for social equity, and how can we make the conversation less awkward, I guess, on, just normalizing and getting people to a higher stage as far as executive levels and what that's going to look like. And, we're coming up here on CES 2023, and I know there's a lot of conversations around social equity and technology and how, we're seeing a lot of new business leaders of color, and it's kind of exciting, but is that really fast enough? Is it a fad? We had, there's so many questions. So I'd love to kind of kick it down to you, Askia, to kind of just introduce yourself, give a kind of a high-level overview, and then to Mike to do a quick intro, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, super duper. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Askia Underwood from Aroma Project Factory. I am the U.S. Business Director. I lead all of our U.S. business and North American initiatives. I am a strategist and certified metaverse expert. The company I work from, Aroma Project Factory, is really neat. We are innovators, futurists, thought provokers, disruptors. We have a team of global digital product development specialists. So everything from front end to SysOps to information architecture, all the way down to strategy, immersive creative. And so we are building technology that is going to really impact the way this exact conversation and topic will go.
Thank you. Mike.
Hi, I'm CEO, founder, futurist of Digital Mind State. We're a strategic agency based in LA that really focuses on connecting Silicon Valley with Hollywood. I'm at the forefront of believing tech is as good as the people that use it. So Silicon Valley being the forefront of technology, Hollywood being at the forefront of culture and lifestyle. So we bridge those, and we're working aggressively also in ushering in businesses into Web3.
Mike, I like the position that you're in, the intersection of entertainment and technology, because I think that's a place where there's a lot of other social equity initiatives happening to like kind of just elevate the profile of a lot of different cultures and colors and all those things.
Mhm.
And you've been in technology a really long time, and I love your background in like radio and entertainment and how all the different platforms. Where in entertainment are you seeing the largest shift happening? And what does that conversation look like? What are people saying as far as, you know, creating equity? What does that mean for entertainment and tech?
That's a very good question. I'd say, for Digital Mind State, everything, entertainment is such a unique field because at the end of the day, the talent becomes the God. They are the power, right? So from rest in peace, Michael Jackson to Miley Cyrus, Kate Perry to 50 Cent, they are the person and they are the enablers of change. And I love it. You see, I'm a big fan of Taylor Swift, right? And how she's challenging the status quo, be it Spotify, and she's leveraging her platform to create change. And maybe that's where we could start when we look at the entertainment field. Artists, brands able to take their platforms to create change. At the end of the day, I think that's one of the biggest things that entertainers, especially coming off of the pandemic, are now realizing that they can be the creators of change that they want to see. And that's why I really love this whole integration of technology, be it Web3, and how artists are being more empowered, not just empowered to change the narrative, but that equity play to create generational wealth.
I like that you said that. I mean, I think one of the things that I just thought about, and maybe Eskia, you can like kind of talk about this a little bit more too. From the enterprise side, I feel like there's so much stuff that artists are able to do as individuals because their enterprise, quote unquote, is just them, like is themselves and their brand. When enterprises have like so many other red tape to go across, what do you think that enterprises and brands and even like consumer brands, what can they take from artists to maybe create a shift a little bit faster? I just feel like it doesn't feel like it's moving very much. And I'm sure it is, but there's no time like the present, right? Like there's no substitute for time. You got to keep it moving quickly. What can brands take away from what's happening in entertainment to adopt and like maybe make social equity more of a priority?
I think that two things. I think brands are trying. They're trying to figure out how to navigate these really delicate kind of conversations, right? This topic of anti-racism is pretty new, right? So we know diversity, we know equity, we understand inclusion. We are seeing at the head of all of the massive corporations that we buy and work for, we see that they are creating initiatives from the top to kind of drill down. It's a slow boil, to your point, right? DICE 2022's Equity and Technology report was published, I believe, in March of this year. Their report represents the perspectives from technologists, right? Specifically working in this space on race and gender equality in the tech world. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't read it, spoiler alert, right? Like race and gender discrimination is a massive issue in tech.
Right.
Because it's an issue in tech, right? It's an issue a little bit everywhere because tech is powered by humans.
Right.
Celebrities, talent, entertainers, those are still humans with individual cultural nuances, with different personality traits, different trigger points, different socioeconomic backgrounds. So it's really about taking the real humans that are technologists, right, and making sure that they are diverse so that when we're building technological products for consumers, when we're trying to put something in front of a celebrity for them to support, advocate for, advance an initiative on, they have more kind of meat on their bones so they can understand the nuances that are related to, the impact of how they use their voice, the impact of the culture that they are either amplifying, the initiative that they are participating in.
So one of the things that like I think you a little bit touched on, and maybe not so directly, but so when I was pulling this together, I'm contacting like all these people. that I think are really amazing influencers in this space of just representation in technology. And I've been in the industry for 20 years. And yes, I mean, I've had a different kind of representation. My parents are from India, and we've got representation on the engineering side, but not on the leadership side. And now we're starting to see more leaders come into this space. But what I was noticing is that all the people that do represent our minority groups, they're so busy. They're so impacted. There's not enough people doing it. And I wonder, what do you think some of the challenges are to getting people to kind of maybe step forward a little bit more? Because is it bandwidth, is resources are always a thing, right? But like, is it fear? Is it, what's drawing people from not stepping forward? And, there's only a few people that are willing to kind of take that leap. It feels like a big commitment, right?
I think it's important to note that while corporations are doing their part to make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion are kind of really at the forefront of what they do in terms of company culture, I think that there's a missing piece, right? People don't necessarily feel and trust diversity, equity, and inclusion, because what does that mean?
Right.
It's completely different. What diversity, equity, and inclusion looks like for you might look differently for me. It might look different for Mike, right?
Yeah,
it is going to look different for anybody in the celebrity category. It's going to look different for people who work in dev, right?
Right.
Because so many times we go to a specific geographic location because the labor is cheaper, which means we are using one specific identity of people to build something that is going to be for everybody. So how does that work, right? You have to be intentional around who you hire. And it can't just be, we have enough women and we have enough Asians and we have enough Blacks.
Yeah, check.
No, those initiatives have to be bundled into sort of an anti-racism initiative, right? So that you can then go, okay, do our products work for the people we're trying to get to buy them, right? Mm-hmm. When we find out who's using our product, then you make better hires. HR can go, okay, I know who our audience is. I know who really loves the work that we do, the products that we monetize. Let me go find employees that look like them so that we can really innovate.
Identify and
innovate to the needs of our bottom line, because that's really what it is anyway, right? DEI is essentially a big, massive risk mitigator. I mean, I'm sorry to all, I love every DEI person. You're all wonderful and magical. Okay. This is not shade. This is just fact, right? It's a massive opportunity to mitigate risk on the discrimination side. Sure. And I think that we all see that. We've all experienced a little bit of that. And it's not going to go fast. It's going to take time, because we have to now educate a new generation of kids on the potential opportunities that they can take advantage of in college. How many high schoolers do you know that can see from where they're sitting down, their little desk is attached to the little chair, right, into the future without thinking about an influencer?
Yeah.
They can't. They don't understand. They think that their mobile device is designed to monetize their likeness, right? Yeah. Their content. My 7-year-old said to me, you should put this on YouTube the other day. And I was like, I'm watering my plant.
Yeah.
Like, he's 7.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a cell phone. He's 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really about making sure that the kids from 13 to 17 know the impact they have past being a content producer, past being a content creator, and how they can really be a massively important peg in the structure of how the technology that they will live and work from is built.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect with that too, because, just as you're saying, he's 7, he doesn't have a phone. And then now we're like also seeing like all this, like, I'm just going to take Disney for an example. They're like, heavily investing in, representing different cultures, but are they really doing a diversity inclusion? Is that really diversity inclusion? Like, are they just, building entertainment for lots of different audiences, or are they pulling in people that actually represent those audiences, So
I'd love to chime in real quick.
Yes, please.
I like to be the listener. And when you initially posed the question, or you threw something out there in terms of entertainment, what I look at, what I really look at as a sweet tooth for, or a sweet spot for entertainment as it relates to social equity is the trajectory, the end game of it all. And I look at clients like Lennox Lewis, who's very successful in what he does, and we have other artists that are extremely successful at what they do. And what I found in my walk is really this thing called being aware of the technology and what you can do, leveraging what your platform is, right? Platforms and clouds are these things that we tend to use haphazardly, where it's like defining actually what your platform is, just like much like defining what the cloud is, and then how to leverage that. So I love, for us, it's really about, being aware. So I'm aware of what blockchain is. Why do I need to integrate with blockchain? Why do I need to worry about tokenizing VR, AR, the Internet of Things, everything that's coming down the pipeline in this age of singularity? You couple that with this word called create. What is it that I want to create? And I think I'll reference Lennox Lewis, both of us being Jamaican, both of us coming from this situation, relating with you, Ranjit, from India to Jamaica. That's the story. To then say, all right, started from the bottom, now we're here. How do we get here? Right. And so, and what is my here? So for Lennox Lewis, I know that, hey, he wants to create a better day for the homeland, Jamaica. How do I go about doing that? How do I go about playing the game, win the game in order to change the game? And that's a very, I say that to all the athletes, especially, play the game in order to win the game, in order to change the game. Shouts out my fraternity brother, Michael Jordan, because he's at the top of the food chain of all this, of everything that he's empowered to create social equity. But bringing it to Lennox Lewis, it's to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to adopt some schools back home in Jamaica. On top of that, I'm going to work to increase the knowledge base for the students, for the schools that I have back home. But I'm going to also take a diversified approach to this. I'll have Indian, I'll have Black, of course, I'll have white, I'll have Latino there, and we'll have this collective. But I am at the forefront of creating the change. And by being able to create the change, then I'm able to make an impact. And I think that's the same story that I could tell with Nicki Minaj, Cardi B. It's the same formula across the board. And so that becomes a sweet tooth or sweet spot for the entertainment world, because they are kind of the masters that control their fate. And they tend to have a tribe of people that work underneath them. So as long as you're able to make them aware of what this ecosystem, this landscape looks like, and what they're involved in and how they can create change, that's a tool. Because especially on the Black hand side, Indian side, Latino side, the BIPOC, we understand where we're from. We understand what we want, where we want to go. Now it's a matter of understanding how to leverage technology to do so. And that's what the entertainment sector is able to do. Other areas such as business and the private sector, that's another path, that's another business model that we can talk about in this conversation. But the other thing that I would say, just to cap off of what Askia was talking about, really I look at human equity. And in the understanding of human equity, it's really this play off of recognizing individuals and their potential, and then leveraging them for their best capabilities in the workforce. That's the master shift right now that we should be looking at post the pandemic. So when we're talking about social equity, I'd rather look at human equity.
I agree. I mean, that's a great way of looking at it. Go ahead.
And I'm going to challenge Mike a little bit on this one, right? Because he sees one side of the coin. I kind of work on the other side of the coin, right? So when you're talking about a Disney, right? Mm-hmm. Disney is powered by consumer affinity. They don't have the power, because consumers can go, we didn't like that. They want money on it. All of their various revenue channels can be shattered based on dislike, consumer dislike, right? They can spend millions and millions of dollars investing in a project, but if people aren't being seen in those projects, especially now forward, they are going to fail. There's a reason why you have seen a princess of every color.
Yes.
Of every ethnic group. I'm waiting for us to go to Australia.
Yeah.
I'm like, who are we going to get from New Zealand and Australia? Because we have covered the gamut. Every girl can be seen in a Disney story.
Mm.
Maybe not every boy yet, so that's a new thing, right? But there is some push and pull around making sure that people are being seen in these stories so they feel more believable. When they're more believable, they're more monetizable. Not that I've said, I think I spent $150 on Encanto toys.
That's what I was thinking, actually, when I mentioned that.
We went to just Sunday. I don't know if you've been, but in Santa Barbara, they have a theater called the Arlington Theater. Uh-huh. Inside the theater, it is designed like Casa Madrigal. My son was like, oh, we're going to see the Nutcracker. We're going to life for you, right? I spent $150 over Bruno, a song we couldn't stop singing. I spent money on a figure that's this big so that because my son was like, I don't even know his name. I'm like, oh,
the little boy.
The little chocolate baby.
Yeah. My son looks just like him.
My son doesn't even look like him, but he saw through complexion, through gender likeness, right? And so the thing about consumer affinity, yes, Nicki Minaj has power, massive power. Her power is her following now. Mm-hmm. And when consumers decide that's not our girl anymore, does she still have the same power?
Yeah, that they can make that shift.
The same for corporations. 100% same for corporations.
So I love that. I want to have fun with this now.
I know you do.
You know,
Mike, you're sitting there with a black t-shirt.
I am built for it. So I love for our audience to make sure that we understand the difference in how a follower and a consumer are rated. Because as I was speaking before somebody just decided to get in my mix, followers, back to my point, Lennox Lewis and his followers, when he say jump, they jump. When Beyonce say jump, they jump. You say something against Beyonce and the bees, they come after you.
Exactly. Bees. I should have just let you call them.
You could have. You could really.
And I would have just let them have you.
And they still would understand what I was saying. They would have added hive afterwards. But the point still remains that those are followers, right? And it's almost like, with digital mindset, we look at, hey, here's your YouTube subscriber numbers versus your YouTube views, right? So when you have followers that are actually about your movement, right? That's a power mechanism in itself. And again, my point still stands, creating the awareness, developing the awareness, then the creation, then the impact. Now, when we talked about, as I said before, when we look at the business side and how do we enable businesses? So if we use the Disney model, then we're talking a different strategy approach. I only referenced the fact that Lennox Lewis, the Cardi B's, the Nicki, under a digital mindset umbrella, we work with them directly. We educate them as to what their impact can possibly be. Now, when I deal with a Disney or, actually a Microsoft or actually Shell, let's put Shell Petroleum out there, that's a different ballgame than the individual artists.
Well, yeah, and I think that kind of plays into a part of the conversation I was kind of alluding to earlier about CES and, the growth of celebrity involvement.
Well, Ranjita, you know how I get down. So in the case of Shell, here's what I tell to Valerie in making our approach authentically real. I shouts out to Valerie as our Asian sister in a power position with Shell. She understands social equity as to also have enablers of Shell, Shell employees. So as we're going to carry out different projects under the Shell brand, who are the employees that we're bringing on to create this initiative? So it's a different ball game than actually it's the same thing as the artist. The artist can then bring in his peoples to make sure that the initiative is the play, much like anyone from Shell, Wendy's, Whataburger, who we work with, where now, hey, we want to, it goes beyond just saying, hey, we want to reach this target market, but how do we really do a social equity play overarching? How do we do that? Right. So there's the understanding that we do want to diversify. We want to have diversity and inclusion, but that's where a digital mindset, that's where an Askia steps in so that they have those plays in place. And what does that look like? down to the local level, right? So from a national down to the local, right? So a lot of this play, in order to really implement social equity on the business side, you're really dealing with a top down. You're creating a culture. The CEOs, the board of directors, be it iHeart, be it any of your big brands, have to be rally behind creating the culture and making sure that from a corporate level in New York down to the local level of any retail store, that this food chain, this supply chain is really being implemented. And so that's why I said earlier that, there's two different ball games when I look at the business side and then the entertainment side.
Mm-hmm.
What's the sweet spot for the entertainment is the fact that you can actually deal with David Beckham. I could deal with Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Mike Tyson, and each of these people with their followers, not consumers, can impact change.
Well, I kind of question also, like, what is the level of, like, these are people, they're humans, right? They are built as brands at this point, but what is the level of responsibility that they have versus what a brand might have? Because they are their own brand. But again, like I said, they're humans and they have their own opinions. And do they want to champion this thing? But they have that huge responsibility of just being a representation of people. So
isn't that interesting? That's the world that we're in.
Yeah.
Right? So the brand, I almost hold them both the same.
Yeah.
In the brand sense, the brand also reports to a board of directors, right? So they know what they have to do in the liability factor. But then also Mike Tyson knows if he doesn't embrace these particular things, his followers could actually decrease. There's also the cancel culture, right? So I think that there's a play, in that case of how do you stay relevant? And then the relevance turns to sustainable, turns to how we can further champion this social equity play.
Well, relevance is something that you're speaking my language, right? So,
I thought I was speaking French before that.
Well, I took that and I lived in Montreal, so
Got you.
We can have a little French tennis if you like.
I got it now.
Play a little Duolingo live. When it comes to relevance, that's personal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter when you say hyperlocal, global, there's a spectrum, right? It's the same.
Every brand should both take that personal.
Yeah, brands, celebrity talent, also brands. They both have a liability. Both have a liability. Celebrities that advocate for things that are not good for their consumers, followers in the public eye have a responsibility, and there are consequences associated with that. We see that with FTX, the fallout, right?
Yeah.
There are people who just thought, I'm investing in something really dope. I'm about to get this money. I am ushering in the future of Web3. Once I really have a clear understanding of it, it is going to organically migrate users into the space. And then the wool got pulled off, and whatever analogy you want to use, right? The whole thing imploded. So now maybe we were 10% of the way to the finish line of like what we would consider adoption, right? But now we're in the negative.
Yeah.
We can recreate the start line when it comes to adoption, but that is because brands and human brands, so brands that have a social initiative or social around equity or economics or sustainability, whatever that initiative is, they have a responsibility to be truthful in those efforts, right? To make sure that people are advocating in truth from a truth. Celebrities have the same responsibility. What they say, who they advocate for, right? What they purport, they're responsible for. And we have to be mindful of that. And I think that's where there's this, but I'm an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm an American. I can say whatever I want. And it's like, you can't, right? And that's the education piece. So Mike has to educate his talent when he books them for work. This is the initiative. Do you understand it?
Yeah.
Here, this is the clear vision. This is the execution of it. And this is the potential impact. This is where we're going, where we are, where we're going, right? Yes. Brands do that from the top down. So you see that intersection? So brands go from top down.
Right. Which is why it takes so long.
Right. Which is why it takes forever. And because there are so many different types of people that you have to be mindful of.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if we all just assigned one bean to every human type on earth, what kind of soup you gonna have? Like what? We're gonna run out of beans. There's not enough beans.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are so many different.
I think that should be a hashtag.
There's not enough beans.
There just isn't. If you say I'm gonna put a white bean in the jar, I'm gonna put a black bean, I'm gonna put a red bean, I'm gonna put a yellow bean, I'm gonna put a navy bean in the jar, pinto bean, the lentil, you're gonna run out of legumes because there are just too many different people, ideas, thoughts, right? Cultures to be mindful of, but they're all equally important.
Well, that's why I like the idea that Mike's talking about, this human capital idea. Is just let's not mince it so much. Let's just talk about it from a broad perspective, but still keeping mindful that everyone is important, right?
Yeah, context and behavior is how you do that. You eliminate gender, race. You just go, hey,
that's very real.
Humans who have an affinity for X, Y, and Z, right? Humans who have this family structure, humans with children, humans who have adopted, right? Maybe not. Maybe it's go humans that are parents.
Real quick, Askia, I got to shout out Peter Wilson for creating the term human equity. That happened to be a brother, OG. I think mainstream caught it. It's very much applicable to this conversation. It's very much applicable to being a solution base for social equity. So I just have to give him a shout out.
I want to shout out somebody now too.
Come on now, here we go.
Go for it.
We're gonna make this hot.
In the name of equity.
Yes.
Today on LinkedIn, the CEO of Group Black posted about Holler Studios, an announcement of this new kind of sticker and gift collective, along with a 3D animation studio. They do a bunch of amazing creative that is designed exclusively to be representative of everyone, right? In his post, he used a term that I was like, excuse me, that's a Skia level thought process right there.
That's big. A Skia level, everybody. That's big. That's very big.
Said, we are really excited about this project, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he used the term inclusion age. I thought.
The inclusion age.
The inclusion age.
We're writing that down, Ronjini. We're writing it down again.
I'm writing it down.
Write it down. And I thought, wait a minute. We are so focused on the digital age.
Yes.
And we look at social equity as it's like a part of it, but it's its own thing. We have to create an entirely new spectrum in order to close the gap. That is what I realized when I read that. I was like, we have to be mindful that it has its own presence. That's why it feels like it's not going fast enough for you, Ronjini. Because it isn't.
Yeah.
Because you are actually thinking about time and energy and the spectrum of your career. Right. The same way 20 years ago, you were typing on a keyboard and waiting to tear the sides off the paper.
Yeah.
Not matrix printer. Right. We're not going to be doing that. At some point, we are not going to be talking about inclusion. Yeah. At some point, I don't know how long.
Some of the biggest things that are happening right now when we look at this world post the pandemic is that the big buzzwords is sustainability. That's actually morphing into something else. But the play on gender, diversity and inclusion, and then the other buzzword has been equity. And I think that's where it's at these days, equity. So when I look at this topic of what we're talking about, whether it's human, whether it's social, and you can put any other word in front of that other word called equity, that's the golden light. So the same way that Sister Askia talked about inclusion and age, I probably still rock with this whole, what I just shared, as just this power factor that's going on right now. We're coming off of this pandemic. Remember when everybody had to make the pivot, and that was a big word. How are you pivoting large, medium, small outfits? The word is equity, and everybody wants a piece of equity. Today, I've said this in many conferences now, it's really about content and e-commerce.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm getting my equity.
You think that equities, are you saying that equity comes from wealth and monetization? Is that what you're saying?
No, I am not.
Okay.
I'm saying that I'm able to design my equity. So by creating the content and e-commerce, I now
ownership
to equity play. And that's one of the big things. When you pull back the veil of things, this is the same thing with DeLorean, the auto manufacturer, and their revamp and what they're doing, leveraging a Web3 tactic. Many companies that are out here in either redefining themselves, rebranding, or, hey, coming out the pandemic, try something new. Remember that phrase, something new? So Web3 is ushering that in. It's accelerating things. And I'd like to say that Web3 will have a strong play on social equity. It becomes an enabler in itself. And so that's something that should,
Yeah, I had that. I was going to
start.
Sure
Askia can say some things too.
I was going to start that conversation, but I was like, that's a whole nother webinar. Like,
yeah, I got a bottle of wine because when I realized that you had Askia as a guest, the audience, grab your popcorn, things happen. Things typically happen. So
you grabbed a bottle of wine.
I had to, 2 PM. Why not?
Yes.
I handled my business since 5 a.m., ladies, to know that I can do this.
Great call. See, and because back to
I like Ron, did you hear that? Great call.
Great call.
Great call. Back to equity. Back to equity. No, in all seriousness, right? You use the term pivot.
Yes.
In the world of digital, pivot essentially meant transform. So what you saw brands doing really fast was starting this digital transformation process. That process, they probably had on their product roadmap 5 to 10 years out.
Yeah, right? Just accelerate. Right. Transform was 2 syllables, pivot was just 1, it was quicker.
And this is the thing. It feels, there are some things that feel slow. The human side of things feel like they're not happening fast enough, but the technological pieces really are.
Yes,
right?
They are.
The technological pieces are here now. The pieces that are going to create a more equitable future are already built. We just need to design them and get them in front of the people that are going to find usefulness in them, right?
Well, and then use those influencers that Mike talked about earlier, those celebrities, to be able to adopt to those and get their followers to start jumping in. But then you have to have responsible leaders, right?
Responsible leadership in the conversation, right? I wrote an article last night.
Go ahead. Let's make it. I just want to raise the bar here because we're on the wrong.
Raise the bar.
Raise the bar just a little bit. Let's talk social equity this way. Had Kanye West bought his social networking platform, then the next thing, one thing you did was buy a platform. Now, how do we implement social equity? I think it would be good for us to talk that out, because then that becomes a roadmap for the listeners who listen to this to understand how they could be enabled, how social equity may work in their respective world. And so we know that the overarching was this freedom of speech being challenged. And now, you know what? I'm a billionaire today. I don't know what tomorrow was, but I'm a billionaire today. I can afford buying this platform. Had he bought that platform, the word in tech has been disruption.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes a perfect case study and example of where we could see where social equity could be implemented, starting with the employees.
I don't know anything about Kanye West's ventures other than those that he has lost and it's been publicly noted. What I would say, though, for celebrities, VCs, any stakeholder that has an investment in technology, they want to make sure that equitable components are built into the product. And there is a specific way that you do that. So for listeners that are interested in building technology or implementing technology or investing in technology, they need to make sure that they are looking at inclusive design. Okay. Inclusive design is extremely important. Inclusive design is layered into human-centered design. Okay. By taking a human-centered design approach to technology, You are placing people and their needs, wants, and desires at the center of your product.
Which is why I mentioned Kanye, because I think he's represented that in a lot of fashion, a lot of other verticals where he's done just that. And I'm very confident to say that that is why he was really looking at the social media platform to take that on. And the same thing that you're saying, Askia, is what he would have implemented because he already has that track record.
See, I would love to comment, but I just, as a rule, don't. I won't even infer. I have no knowledge of it whatsoever.
But he's speaking on the business side, right? Not the explosive personality.
Exactly. Yeah, only the business and what that would, the fact that here everyone we're still in a digital age, even though we love the inclusive age. We live in a data-driven world. We understand the power of social networks. Hey, we have a Black person who's buying a social media platform of his status. He could be the seed of change. And now he could be the one to implement social equity. He already has those designs in place. He's done that in the world of fashion. He's doing that in the world of music. His music is not just Black, it's actually all encompassing of different people. And that's the same thing that would transfer over in the world of social media. And so I just referenced that because we would see the tangible results of social equity had he purchased that. We don't see that in the world of fashion because the deals with Adidas, the Gap, those weren't him building directly from the ground up. He was actually going to own Parler. And so as an owner of Parler, 100% owner, then he can regut this and change it the way that he wants. Under the Gap, under the Adidas, and a lot of these other deals that he had to play a ball with them. Bend but don't break. They broke.
I think, we have to kind of wrap up soon, but I think what I'm taking away from this, and I think it's such an interesting, and I was hoping something like this would come out of this, is that, it's a combination of what both of you said. Designing for humans versus designing for race is really the key. Is whatever you're doing, if we're designing for humans, then that's going to be the winning game for any enterprise, whether it's technology, financial services, entertainment, whatever the case may be.
Yes.
100%. Doesn't matter the category. Utility and usability drive usefulness. That is the key takeaway. Usefulness is how we will advance and close the gaps using technology. That's the utility of the product. That's it. There really isn't another way. There really isn't.
Just stop overcomplicating everything, guys.
Stop overcomplicating everything and really focus on building technology that is going to close the gaps that matter.
I love it. Any last comments there, Mike? Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, Skia said something I finally agreed with. That part. I respect her big time. I love what she's saying. Just having fun with it. My closing thoughts, again, it really goes back to human equity. I think that is the driver of change for social equality and social equity. When we can recognize individual and their potentials, that's the greater good. And I love what Warren Buffett said. If America embraced diversity and inclusion 50 years ago, Lord only knows where we would be today.
Yeah.
That's big.
And you know what, Mike? I would say something after this, but we don't have time. So I will text what I have to say to you. I will text it to you so that the listeners don't have to see me take my earrings off. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you mentioned the big WB, and so there she goes. Oh, Thank you guys so much for your time. I love that we were able to have this conversation, and we are going to proliferate this everywhere. So again, thank you so much. And I think more of these conversations to come for sure.